Hey, this is Dave from metalepidemic.com. Thank you for checking out our YouTube video. Please feel free to hit the subscribe button below if you like this type of content, and we hope you enjoy the review. What's up, guys? Dave and Duncan from Metal Epidemic back with another album review. And for this review, Duncan and I have been checking out the new album from a UK instrumental post-rock band, Maybeshewill. The band's new album, No Feeling Is Final, will be released on November 19th via Robot Needs Home Collective. So, Maybeshewill have returned with their first album in 7 years.
Yeah, they split up.
Yeah, they
were
did, yeah.
gutted. We were, because I think we just got into them.
Yeah, yeah.
Like on their farewell. It was maybe not their farewell tour, but I can't remember where we interviewed them. I can't remember who they were playing with.
Sporty Dillinger.
That's what it was. It was at a Dillinger gig. And this was us finding them.
Yeah.
And this seems to happen a lot with us. I've realised this with British instrumental bands. This happens a lot because we saw Three Trapped Tigers play, once again, can't remember who they supported either, because it might have been like that wasn't this gig, but we saw them, and I fell in love hard with that band, and then they haven't done anything in years either. I think they may have split up, maybe. Come on, guys, COVID meant that you didn't do anything for a year. Get an album out. But like they like, we were like super nice guys, loved the stuff they were releasing, and then they were like, yeah, we're just gonna maybe not do this anymore. And I was like, or maybe you could just continue. Yeah. So I'm excited about this one.
Yeah, they disbanded in 2016. They played a one-off show in 2018, and then January 2020 they announced their reformation. The upcoming album was again recorded and produced by bassist Jamie Ward, and intends to be a message of hope and solidarity. It's a story of growing grassroots movements across the world that are rejecting the doomed futures being sold to us and imagining new realities based on the equality and sustainability. It's a reckoning with the demons in our histories and a promise to right the wrongs of the past. No Feeling Is Final is 10 tracks, clocks in about 50 minutes in length. As we mentioned, I absolutely loved the band's last album, Fair Youth. I reviewed it for Rock and Roll Reviews back in the day. I gave it the biggest soapy hand job you have ever seen in your life.
Deserving soapy hand job.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a fucking great album.
Yeah, I literally nothing negative to say about it at all. I just thought it was the kind of perfect example of how to do post-rock infused with electronica. They always create fascinating albums. Like out with that album, they always do something really interesting. For a band that have no vocals, there's always something going on that pulls you in.
Yeah.
On Fair Youth, it was like a kind of combination of really clever piano work and really nicely placed electronics, but holding it together were some really well written songs. And they always know how to put an album together that flows really well. You know, the tracks always blend really well into another, and have all these kind of like peaks and valleys. For this album, obviously, there's been a bit of a gap between Fair Youth and this, and you can hear straight away this is a different type of album, kind of tonally. From the kind of opening track, We've Arrived at the Burning Building. There's a bit of a shift into a slightly more somber sound for part of the album, and I think that kind of partly comes down to the inclusion of the strings on this release, which is something they've really focused on.
It's prominent.
100%. And they've dabbled in it in the past. They've had strings, but this feels more like a kind of like a key element of the album. I love strings like this. Like this sort of stuff really, really worked for me. And it's funny because I'm not a huge like symphonic metal guy. Like that style is just not for me. But when it's involves kind of string sections like this, you know, it's not cheap or kind of gimmicky sounding. It's adding, you know, depth and emotion to the music. I am totally on board. It's one of the reasons I loved a band called the Elijah so much. The strings they put into their sound was just phenomenal.
Adds warmth.
Yeah, it does.
To songs. Yeah. It's a textural thing when used in this genre of music.
Yeah.
Whereas symphonic stuff, it's prominent in the songwriting. I think that's where I fall off as well. If I want symphony, I'll go and listen to a symphony. I don't want my metal with that, Dave.
Yeah, there's a wee slight element of cheese to that as well, which I don't know, just not for me. But so here though, the strings are very, very tastefully done. They just accentuate the songs in all the right ways. They're not like too dominating either. They know when to kind of pull back and just let the guitars or electronics push more to the front. But when they do have that kind of spotlight on them, they are just really emotive. There are moments that are just unbelievably powerful on this album. Tracks like Zara, for example, which I think from what I was reading, it's inspired by the Labour politician Zara Sultana, and she did a speech on climate crisis. So they've used like part of the speech in their song, and I think that with the strings over the top, it just takes you on this real kind of like emotional roller coaster. There's also moments on here that they also feel kind of like a bit like a movie score as well at times.
The album is very like I was actually thinking about like the thing about bands that don't have vocalists in general is that unless you're something like Animals as Leaders, where like you're literally watching like the dexterity of players playing at like such a high elite level at some of the most complicated music, it's very difficult to find a focal point. But a band like Maybeshewill, like this particular album, I can imagine it being played in its entirety with visuals in the background taking you on a journey. You have Zara kicks in, you could have those clips playing in real time while they're playing with the sound bites, and it like, and once again the strings I think add an element of that as well. You associate movie scores with big string sections. That's just part of it. So I think you're right on that one. Like there was whole sections here where like I could totally imagine like a short film being played in the background of this, which I think is once again to its benefit. And I think it also shows a degree of, not that they were ever immature, but there's a and I hate using the term as a description for bands, but there's a huge level of maturity on this album.
Oh yeah,
which I think is aided by that as well.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree with what you were saying there. The tracks like Complicity or Refuturing, both of those tracks had that kind of ebb and flow that I felt like I was kind of listening to like a short film. And it also, like Complicity, for example, had almost like a kind of futuristic kind of synth sound to it as well, which was really cool. And then Refuturing got an amazing sax solo on it by a guy called Marcus Joseph, which is just outstanding. I know like sax seems to be the instrument of choice this year.
Loving it.
But that is just note perfect on that part of the song, where it just, it's kind of simmering in the background with piano and some light strings, but really well done. I liked how some of the tracks also had like almost like a cliffhanger ending to them. I'm not like what's going to happen next type feel to it. Not every time, but there were a few that finished and they almost kind of opened the door into the next track, if that kind of makes sense. Also fits with the theme, which I wasn't aware of in there. Like if you're essentially writing an album which has a concept of trying to take the power back, or trying to refocus things that you change the rhetoric, so to speak. Like the tracks finishing with what's going to come next is in line with that. That makes sense to me tonally, that like you're almost putting the power in the audience to take the journey forward to the next one. And the album, I agree with that. I think there are certain moments where it finishes, it like feels like it's building up to this crescendo, and you get that crescendo at the end, but it's like, what's the next movement in the score? Once again, thinking movie score, what's the next movement we're moving to? And then you get the next track that comes in. Which is not easy to do, by the way. It's really not. If done poorly, it feels unsatisfying. Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of great moments on this release, to be honest. I think one of my favourites was probably Invincible Summer. It did have some kind of fair youth type vibes, especially in the rhythm and the chord choices, but it's layered with a very kind of retro synth and piano. But the strings, though, as I mentioned, are the key here. They just take that track to the next level, adding even more emotion and kind of feeling to that track. I enjoyed the kind of like folkier tones on Green Unpleasant Land.
Yeah.
Really kind of clever choice instrumentation, and again adding something a little different so that the album doesn't become kind of too repetitive in any way. That track also had a little bit of kind of female vocal on it as well.
Yeah.
Which was cool, and quite a heavy ending, like a quite dramatic kind of sounding ending, big, quite dark power chords right at the end. I say heavy, like heavy for Maybeshewill.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I think one thing this band have always been good at are kind of taking you on that journey and transitioning really effortlessly between sections. And again, the transitions on this album are fantastic. There's a switch, like kind of tonally, in a track called Even Tide.
It's the longest one on the album as well, and it's so well placed.
Yeah,
so well done.
Yeah, there's a moment about 5 minutes in where it kind of starts to build with these like darker, more ominous chords, and it's layered with some kind of lead work. It's so well done. Like the shift from that kind of like fairly upbeat part of the track with those like retro type synths again, and there's a kind of brass piece comes in. It's just brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I think there was only kind of one moment on the album where I switched off a little. There was a track near the end called The Last Hours.
It feels a bit long. That's the only one where I kind of felt like it overstayed its welcome a little bit. So I don't disagree with that. And the fact it comes off the back of quite a long track anyway.
Yeah. It had some interesting moments, like the kind of early on and later in the track, it had some kind of newer, kind of leprous type proggy kind of tendencies to it. But in the middle of the track, it goes very minimalist with kind of strings and piano, and I just kind of zoned out a bit when it was on, to be honest. The last track though, Tomorrow, I think that's perfect ending, just like hits you right in the feels. It's piano piece, some very, very kind of light kind of synths or strings in the background, but I felt like that track just kind of encapsulated the meaning and the theme of the album perfectly. It's a stunning ending to the album. It's another great album from this band, to be honest. I'm really glad these guys are back, and I'm really kind of impressed with the fact they've come back and not just went back to the sound they had on the last album or just made like an extension of it. They've had a concept and a theme in mind for this release, and they've kind of built the album around that. And you totally know it's a Maybeshewill album. It doesn't sound like Fair Youth. It doesn't really sound like any of their albums, to be honest. But as I said, they've used strings in the past, but this feels like they've kind of fully committed to it on No Feeling Is Final. And it's probably their least kind of guitar-heavy album. Like there's no real like riff moments on this. The guitars are always there, but they are more a texture or kind of adding another layer to the overall sound. Same with the electronics, to be honest. They feel a bit kind of calmer on this release instead of being like a focal point. But it totally works. I think if they had the electronics as a kind of out in front feature, it might be too distracting on a release like this.
100% agree.
Yeah, maybe lose a bit of that depth from it. So they've placed that perfectly on the album. Production again by Jamie is just spot on.
Clean. It's clean, man. Yeah. It's a clean production. You hear absolutely every nuance of every instrument.
Yeah, and as you say, a very kind of warm sounding album. I love the sound they captured on Fair Youth, but I think this is even more impressive. When an album manages to kind of deliver that like emotional connection, it's hard not to be completely gripped by it. And I think the production here just fits like a glove. It elevates it in all the right places. So yeah, overjoyed these guys are back doing what they do. I think they're a bit of an underrated band in the UK. 100%, to be honest.
100%.
I hope this album takes them on to that next level. We obviously saw them supporting Dillinger many moons ago.
And they don't sound like Dillinger, so but I think they're the sort of band, because they don't have a vocalist in a lot of respects, and because they kind of exist in an environment where they are playing things that are drawn from lots of different like kind of styles and elements, I think they can seamlessly morph onto almost any bill. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like especially for larger touring bands coming to the UK, I think you could probably shove a Maybeshewill on, and they would comfortably do it. So I think this album would be a treat to see live. Like you're saying, with some visuals, I think it'd be really, really something. If the band are listening, and not that they want to, like, not that I'm anyone to tell you what to do, you tour this album in its entirety, you get a really good like visual package. I mean, the artwork for this is stunning. It's just it's like a scene of like a valley with trees, not one sign of any man-made structure, technology, or anything. And that's what you do. You almost do the Nine Inch Nails thing, where you go like with some of their I'm sure it was like some of the Ghost stuff they did, where like the instrumental recording sessions they had videos that paired up with them, and that's what you do. You do something very organic, nature driven. Like you could do a full through of this one where you just played the entire 50 minutes synced up to some incredible visual stuff, and that's the tour, man. It'd be fucking amazing. We've been recording a few reviews tonight. Interestingly enough, a few of them have been of bands that have come off hiatus.
I didn't realise until we started doing them, actually.
Yeah, it's so bizarre. But this is a COVID thing. I told you about this before. There are tons of bands out there that will have not done anything, that will have went their separate ways because life got on top of them. That last year were like, well, you know, I can't go and do my day job now. I have to sit at home. Or there's my instrument. Let me connect with, because technology is so easy to use now with that sort of thing. Let me connect and write some stuff. So it doesn't surprise me that, what did you say, last year they reformed? Of course they did.
Yeah.
But there's a part of me that's like incredibly happy about that, because I feel that some of the bands that were forced into disbanding or, you know, hiatus or whatever are the bands that never had the attention on them, that really struggled to make their ends meet. You know, like, were clearly excellent at what they did. They just couldn't get that market share of the audience, or never quite found their groove. And having that time to like that time of lack of pressure of day jobs or whatever, to be able to sit down and do that, I think it has made a lot of these bands come back, and for the better. Like in this case, Maybeshewill, I think they're a great band. I really, really do. I've loved them since we saw them live that time. Like yourself, regularly go back to their back catalogue. And I, like, as soon as you said they had something coming out, I was excited. And it wasn't something I'd been teasing. It was like fairly short notice for it. And then from the first listen through to what I've listened to like 4 times now, it's fucking great. They are so good at what they do, so incredibly accomplished. This is a great listen. A couple of steps that maybe don't fully meet what I want, but you sync up a cool visual with that section where things strip out and it's a retro synth and a piano with something interesting in the background, just elevates that. It's awesome to have them back. This is a fucking great album. If you've never listened to Maybeshewill, get them on your radar and give them some love, because the last thing I want is these guys come back out of COVID, release an album, and then disappear again, because that would be a shame. They're a band that always kind of feel like the next album is going to be better. You know what I mean? Like, and that's not to be dismissive of what they've released. I still think they have it in them to do a better album than the exemplary album they've just released now. So.
Yeah. Okay, so ratings for this one. I at the moment I can't tell whether I prefer this or Fair Youth. I think I need more time with this. I've been listening to Fair Youth for like 7 years, so it does have a bit of an advantage.
It's got a slightly unfair advantage.
Yeah, but it's very close. Very different albums as well, though. I think it might depend on my particular mood as to which one I would listen to. Fair Youth was a fairly positive and upbeat album, probably one of the most accessible albums, and it had great moments electronically and is a bit more kind of guitar based in places, where this has kind of darker moments, a bit more emotion. It can be quite intense, and it really takes you on that kind of journey like Fair Youth did. This also feels like it has more of a message than Fair Youth, but I feel like every time I listen to this album, I like it more and more, so there could be a point where the two albums are just as good as each other. I think at the moment, listening to this, it's probably a 4.5 for me. It's very good indeed. It's a really good album. If you'd heard of the band before, then I'd definitely check this one out when it drops. What are you thinking, Duncan?
We're in sync tonight on every fucking review. 4.5 for me. I think this is fucking great. Absolutely love it. I'm so happy they're back, and I wish them all the success in the world with this one, because by God, they've earned it.
Yeah, 100%. So the new album drops on the 19th of November. No Feeling is final. I'll put links below in the description to the band's Facebook and any pre-orders and stuff that they're available for the album. Check it out. If you've heard any of the singles, drop some comments in. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you think of the album when it drops as well. Happy to hear your thoughts on it. That's the review. Thank you for checking it out. We'll be back with another review very soon, but until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.